policy where no windmills are being built. You know, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build like 200 windmills. The people are going crazy. Nobody wants them, and they're very expensive. They don't work without subsidy. You don't want energy that needs subsidy. Energy is a good business. You don't need subsidy. But when you build these massive towers, and they're 25 stories tall, 40 stories, they have 170 stories tall. The blades, they take 3 ships to ship them. It's crazy. They're dangerous. You see what's happened up in the Massachusetts area with the whales, where they had 2 whales wash ashore in, I think, a 17-year period. And now they had 14 this season. The windmills are driving the whales crazy, obviously. And they had actually over, I think, 125 or something over a number of years. And we don't want that to happen. It's a disaster it's amazing the way a true environmentalist would say, oh, we love wind. It sounds good, but that's about where it ends. You know, after 10 years, you have to redo them. And what happens is they don't do that. They let them stand and they rust, and they say, because of the environment, I'm not a believer in this, but they say you can, because it's a certain fiberglass, that the blades cannot be buried in earth, that's an environment. So what do you do with them? What do you do with them? And I don't know if you've ever gone to Palm Springs, California, or any of these places where you have long-term windmills standing. They're a disaster. They're rusting, rotting, closed, falling down. This is as you enter Palm Springs. And they put new ones next to them because nobody wants to take them down, because why should they take them down? It's very expensive to take them down. And you can't do anything with them because the blades, you can't bury them because of the environmental protection. We'll look at that. Doesn't make sense, but that's what they say. So we are at the beginning of a great, beautiful golden age of business. And I think we're also at a golden age of common sense, because everything I'm saying to you, from a simple water faucet that doesn't allow water to come out appropriately, to all of the other elements of what we do and what we're going to do, to take 50 to 60 trillion dollars off our country's balance sheet because some man that has no idea what he's doing, he has no idea. You know it, I know it, the Democrats know it. What they did is a crime by allowing that to happen. And I'll bet you, if you asked him today, how much acreage did you submit? Essentially, did you destroy? You destroyed the economic viability of drilling in the ocean. And with AI coming along and all, you know, a lot of people don't realize that AI is going to be a big thing, but you'll need double the electricity at least that we have right now. So right now we produce electricity for many, many different things. AI is a very big deal in terms of the future. China is already building electric facilities, big, bold electric facilities. And you know how they're being fired up? With coal. They're being fired up with coal. And we're going to build bigger and better ones. People like Hussein that are doing the same thing as he is. I'll bet they don't do it as well, because I know how he does it, but they're doing a lot of things. The problem is they can't get their permits, because I say build the plant with the building. So with the structure, build the plant, because if you go into the grids are old. So they said, that's a great idea. In other words, build your electric facility alongside of your plant. And you could have extra output if you want, because once you build it, you can make it larger pretty inexpensively. You could have extra output, which you'll sell to the public, but build it with the plant, and people are loving that idea. So we're going to have a lot of fun making America great again, and it's going to happen, I think, very, very quickly. It's already happened. So I would say this, and this has been pretty openly reported by the news. There's never been anything like what's happened since we won the election. Couple of months since we won the election, the whole perception of the whole world is different. People from other countries have called me. They said, thank you. Thank you. The perception of the whole world is different. We're going to have to settle some big problems that are going on right now. We're going to have to settle up with Russia, Ukraine. That's a disaster. I look at numbers every week, the number of people being killed in that war. People don't know, mostly soldiers now. But the towns have been obliterated. This was a Biden fiasco that that should have never happened. If we had a real president, if we had a president that knew what he was doing, Russia would have never, ever gone in. But they did go in, and we have a mess. The cities are all blown up. The people have largely left, and the soldiers are killing each other at levels that haven't been seen since the Second World War. So we'll have to get that one straightened out too. That's a tough one. Much tougher than it would have been before it started. I can tell you that. A deal could have been made just by an average deal maker. Deal could have been made on that. So thank you all for coming. We'll take a couple of questions. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
President, thank you. Wanted to touch on the world on fire that you mentioned, but let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and
Yeah.
the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah,
And then
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, you know, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake. We lost 38,000 people. It cost us the equivalent of $1 trillion, maybe more than that. Probably the most expensive, they say it was the most expensive structure, if we call it a structure, which I guess you can, ever built. And giving that away was a horrible thing. And I believe that's why Jimmy Carter lost the election, even more so than the hostages. Those two things.
Follow up on Ukraine and Iran, the two negotiations you'll be heading into. On Ukraine, you said just before it's a lot more complicated now.
Much more complicated.
Do you believe?
Because it would have never started.
Right, but it has started. It's you.
Well, not only started, the cities are largely knocked down.
So
they're
got
like
what you've got at this point. Would to hold on to leverage in dealing with President Putin? Would you make a commitment to the Ukrainians that you will keep supporting them during the negotiations?
Well, I wouldn't tell you
And
if that were the
would you
case.
make a commitment to provide a security guarantee if they do enter into an armistice or a ceasefire along the lines that the French and the Germans?
So, you know, a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that that's been like written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
They can never join NATO.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal and then Biden broke it. They had a deal, which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join NATO. And that's always been, and nobody knows more about NATO than I. You know, years ago when I first started this, I didn't know too much about NATO, but I got it right anyway. I said, they're taking advantage. I'm the one that got, and the Secretary General was here, as you know, 2 weeks ago, saying that if it weren't for me, NATO wouldn't even exist right now, because I raised from countries that weren't paying their bills. At that time, 28 countries, 20 of them were not paying their bills, 21 to be exact. They weren't paying, or they were paying a very small portion. And I raised over $680 billion. That was the number he gave, by saying, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. And as soon as I said that, the money came pouring in. But Obama could have said it. Other people could have said it. Bush could have said it. Nobody said it but me. I took a lot of heat. They said, oh, that's a threatening statement. Well, they weren't paying their bills. I said, we're not going to protect you if you're not paying the bills. So in a true sense, I saved NATO, but NATO's taken advantage of us. And one of the problems that I have, and I've said it openly, I said it to President Zelensky, Europe is in for a tiny fraction of the money that we're in. Now, whether you like that situation or not, Europe is much more affected than the United States. We have a thing called the ocean in between us, right? Why are we in for billions and billions of dollars more money than Europe? And you know, they're a similar size, a little smaller, but they're a similar size economy as the United States when you add them up. And yet Europe is in for a small fraction of the number the United States is in. Now, Biden could have called them up during the term. That's what I did. I said, you have to pay your bills. And they all, one stood up. I won't say who, you'll probably have it, because the papers, the media hated to report on it. But a prime minister stood up from a country, you know, a famous meeting of 28 nations with no press, no anybody in the room. He stood up, he says, does that mean if we don't pay our bill, and at that point it was 2%, it should be 5%. It should be 5%, not 2%. But at that point it was 2%, but many people didn't pay. Some people didn't pay anything, but many people were way, including Germany. Germany was at less than 1%. Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah. Well, you can't do it at 2%. I mean, at 2%, every country, if you're going to have a country in a regular military, you're at 4%. I think they should be, you know, they're in dangerous territory. I think it should be, they can all afford it, but they should be at 5%, not 2%. I'm the one that got them to pay 2%. But a gentleman stood up, a prime minister stood up, and he said to me, sir, could I ask you a question? You're saying we have to pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, will the United States protect us from Russia? I said, if you don't pay, you mean you're delinquent? He said, yes. He said, if you're delinquent, we will not protect you. I took a lot of heat. Although it was somewhat closed door, I took a lot of heat from the media. And you know what happened? The money started pouring in. That's why NATO has money. And the Secretary General said it was the most incredible thing he had ever seen in a negotiation. Now, if I would have said, yes, we will, nobody would have paid. If I would have loved to say, yes, we'll protect you even if you don't pay. But that's not the way life works.
Two questions related to each other. First, you said on your first day of office, you're going to pardon January 6th defendants. Are you planning to pardon those who were charged with violent offenses?
Well, we're looking at it, and we have other people in there. And as you see, I guess 24 or 28 people came now from the FBI. That came out very quietly. Nobody reported it, but they had people in some form related to the FBI. They had 4 or 5 people that were strongly related to the FBI. We have to find out about that. We have to find out about Hezbollah. We have to find out about who exactly was in that whole thing, because people that did some bad things were not prosecuted. You know, I see it all the time, and you see it too. People that were doing some bad things weren't prosecuted, and people that didn't even walk into the building are in jail right now. So we'll be looking at the whole thing, but I'll be making major pardons. Yes, please. Please.
On Jack Smith's report.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. It's good to see you again. 2 questions about Syria and the ongoing war in Gaza. About Syria, the Pentagon disclosed last month the U.S. has some 2,000 troops in Syria. That's almost double the number initially we were told of 900. Will you keep that troop capacity the same upon taking over?
Well, I won't tell you that because that's part of a military strategy, but I will say it was Turkey. Turkey's been after that country in different names and different forms and shapes for 2,000 years. Those people that went in are from Turkey. And President Erdogan is a friend of mine. He's a guy I like, respect. I think he respects me also. He's the one that didn't go after certain people after I requested that he not. You know who I'm talking about, the Kurds. I don't know how long that's going to, because they're natural enemies. They hate each other. But he didn't do that yet. And he didn't do it in the past also. He started, and I said, please don't do that, and he didn't do it. So, but if you look at what happened with Syria, Russia was weakened, Iran was weakened, and he's a very smart guy. And he sent his people in there through different forms and different names, and they went in and they took over, and that's the way it is.
I'm sorry, do you have concerns about HTS taking control?
By the way, I have the envoy here. Is that in the back, standing with my son, Eric, is Steve Witkoff, who's just got back from the Middle East, and he's done a fantastic job. He's a great deal maker. I said, what we need there is a deal maker, because nobody makes a deal. We have people that understand where the rivers are and where the meets and bounds are, but they can't talk. They can't make deals. Steve's done a great job. I just want to thank you, Steve. You've been working endlessly for months, and he's working specifically on the hostages, trying to get them back.
Well, that was my second question is Hamas.
Steve, come up for a second. Maybe you might want to say a couple of words.
Sir,
I didn't-
Hamas released another hostage
I didn't know Steve was going to be here, actually.
Neither did I.
He's done a fantastic job, and it's a dangerous job, too, and we appreciate it. He didn't know about this kind of danger and the other deal making he does. Now he sees a lot of big danger. Come on up, Steve.
Mr. President, can I ask you the second part of that? Hamas
Yeah,
released
just one
another
second,
hostage
please.
video.
I'm going to give you a little report on the hostages, if I can. Steve? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wow. Well, I think we're making a lot of progress, and I don't want to say too much because I think they're doing a really good job back in Doha. I'm leaving tomorrow back to go to Doha, but I think that we've had some